How did you find out about the Via Francigena? Well, that's pretty easy because here in Italy, I would say most of the people know already Via Francigena. It's a famous walking path pilgrimage, almost as much as the Camino di Santiago in Spain, the Via degli Dei here in Italy, or Cammino Celeste, which is in my home region, Friuli. How many kilometers did you walk daily? Maximum, minimum, average? I would say minimum has definitely been the last day that I walked, which was 16 or 18 kilometers, I believe. Maximum has been the day that I badly hurt myself. That leg was supposed to be 32 kilometers, I believe, but we took a detour, so we ended up walking about 34 kilometers. Average, I don't know exactly, but I would say 23, 24, 25 per day. What were the temperatures during your trip? What was the humidity? How often did you experience bad weather? The temperatures, consider that it was end of August, beginning of September, so the temperatures were not extremely hot anymore. I would say the average during the day was 29, 30 degrees. The minimum, though, in the early morning when we would wake up and get ready was 18, 19. So it was pretty cold. You had to put a nice sweater and maybe a jacket on. Humidity, luckily, was very low. So the air was nice and dry, so you wouldn't sweat awfully all that much. And the bad weather, I was very lucky with it because I experienced rain only the very first day. How do you rate the conditions of the footpaths? Is it okay for an average walker? Definitely yes. The part that I walked was definitely very easy for an average walker. I have to say the difficulty with this path was not about the conditions of the paths as much as the length. Which brings me to the next question. How do you prepare for the trip and make sure you are in good physical shape to endure the whole trip, the whole walk? Very good question. So I personally didn't train specifically for this trip. I love hiking here on the Alps, so I was hiking as much as possible that summer. But I must say that the training that you need for the Via Francigena is very different than hiking on the mountains. In fact, it's way more about endurance in walking on a flat surface. So, for example, I had zero problems those few times where we had to hike a slope or hike up a hill, whereas other people were truly suffering the uphills. But on the contrary, I was suffering the long walking on a flat surface. It was really consuming my legs. To make sure you are in the proper shape for this kind of trip, I would suggest to train by simply walking few kilometers a day, even on a flat surface, better on terrain, but on asphalt if you live in a city is fine as well, I guess. An average walking speed is 5 kilometers per hour, maybe 4. So if you want to walk for 10 kilometers to train, for example, that would only take 2 hours of your day. And in the weekend, I would highly suggest to go for longer walks, try to do the 20 kilometers walk. If you do this kind of training for a month or 2, you should be good to go. Okay, let's go for a less dramatic lighting. Was the accommodation, hotels, convents good each day? Is there any one place you stayed at that ended up being your favorite? No, they were not good each day. Although I realized that in the documentary, I literally only filmed the good places because those were the ones that made us think, wow, I really want to shoot this. But we also the accommodations were very, very different. We also stayed at 1-star hotels and hostels where we shared rooms. So don't think that all the accommodations were like the couple that I showed. Whether there was one that sticks out as my favorite, honestly, I mean, there were those 2 luxury locations where we stayed at, the 2 with the swimming pool, basically, Suvignano and Casanova Resort in San Quirico d'Orcia. Those were the fanciest ones, but if I had to pick one favorite one, Probably the night zero of my trip. So before I started walking, we were in Abbadia Isola, and I didn't film it because I didn't start to film for the trip. I think it was an ex-monastery. It turned into a hostel for pilgrims. We were in a room where there were like 6 or 7 bulk beds. Everything was very essential, but very functional, very clean, and very warmly welcoming. And outside of the window of the bedroom, the view was just majestic. It was just such a peaceful place in the middle of the fields. And in the distance, you could see the castle of Monteriggioni. Many of us would sleep together in the same room, but the rooms were very spacious, so we were not on top of each other. It was very nice. I also like to share the bedroom with people. So yeah, that would be probably my favorite. How much water did you carry and how easy was it to stop and pee? How much water? Well, I had a 1 liter bottle and then a half liter bottle. There are many fountains along the Via Francigena. In the part that I walked, very often they were even signaled in the signs, 5 kilometers to the next fountain, 1 kilometer to the next fountain, which was extremely convenient. I had fellow walkers, pilgrims, that would just take a half liter bottle with them. I think that's not enough. I mean, that's barely enough. Let's say that's barely enough. I would usually take 1 liter with me at any time, and I've never had any lacking problem. In the Lazio part, there are legs where fountains are not very common, so locals told us in advance to be a little bit more prepared, and I brought 1.5 liter, but it ended up being a little bit too much anyways. I drink a lot, so keep that in mind. I would say 1 liter would be enough for most of the people in the summer season, because then of course it depends on the season, on the weather and the temperature. Oh wait, the pee part. How easy was it to stop and pee? Actually, in the summer, you sweat so much that you don't pee a lot. I would say within the walking period each day, those 2 times that we would stop was more than enough. But you cross a lot of wooded areas and a lot of fields, and it's very easy to just go behind the bush and pee there. Sorry if I'm going too much into detail, but I would just recommend to women to not use paper if you pee in outside, just because it's not nice to leave those kind of traces. I know that paper is biodegradable, but it's aesthetically not pleasing to walk by and it's very clear that someone did it there. You're sweating so much anyways, you are all wet and dirty. I would say just don't use paper. Or if you really want to do it, just take it in a plastic bag and put it in your backpack. How many languages did the travelers speak? Not many. In my group, only Italian, English, French, and German. Now let's answer some about the documentary itself, the filming part. I got so many questions about the drone, which I'm gonna answer in the second part of this Q&A because otherwise it would be too much. Which cameras did you use? Aside of the drone, which I'm gonna tell you next time what drone I used a Panasonic Lumix G7 and an iPhone 12 mini. I alternated between these two. I would say the footage is 50% and 50%. The G7 is better for details, for low light situations and for cinematic kind of shots. The iPhone 12 mini is perfect for when it's very sunny, when it's very bright. It has amazing stabilization, so when I had to shoot and walk, I would always use the phone. When it was raining the first day, I could only use the iPhone, and I used a lot the wide-angle lens of the iPhone. Is a really good one. Oh, now it's an interesting question. When you're filming someone or you're shooting in a nice, cozy situation, aren't you worried of disturbing the person or ruining the atmosphere? Well, this is a problem that any vlogger, I guess, has in any situation. I must say, in my usual vlogs, this problem is more accentuated because here I was invited there as a YouTuber. I was officially a filmmaker, so I was supposed to film everything that was happening. So for the first time in my filmmaking career, I would say I wasn't as nervous as filming in those social situations. This said, it was tricky to film people, especially because trip companions would change every couple of days. So you didn't have so much time to get to know a person. And while walking, I had to try to chat with new people and introduce each other. At the same time, I had to film. So imagine I just met this person, you are in the middle of such an engaging discussion about a common interest, and then suddenly the wooded area opens up and you see the lake there and there is this incredible landscape. I had to just not even give notice, immediately pull out the camera, turn it on and shoot this scene. And I don't even know what these poor travel companions thought about it. I just hope that they realized that I had to do my job at the same time. It was not just a pleasure trip for me. About the cozy situations when we are at the dinner table and we are having a conversation, I don't know. Well, if it's too intimate of a moment or too personal, I would not pick up the camera anyways. So that's how I solved that thing. Did everyone have walking poles or sticks? Well, no. I did, and for most of my life, I thought that walking poles were for people with either light disabilities or for older people. I had to reconsider my beliefs a few years ago. During a summer here on the Alps, I kept encountering experienced hikers that would beg me to start using the poles when I'm young, I'm in my 20s, because they prevent problems to your knees and to your back. I already have weak knees. Also, by starting to actually trying them out, I realized that I love walking with poles because you move your entire body, not only your legs. Also in this kind of trips like the Via Francigena one, every few hours you have to make sure to pull up your hands somehow because otherwise the blood kind of swells your hands up. If you have your poles, already your hands are sort of lifted. And also it's sort of like even the noise of the sticks that beat on the floor, on the pavement, are sort of like an accompaniment to your walking, especially I guess if you are alone or in a small group. It's just a very nice extra. You don't need them, but having them is definitely nice. I would definitely take them with me again. I love the maps you put on the screen to give the viewer a better idea of where you were. I guess this is more a suggestion than a question. And I think this person is referring to the fact that in many of my vlogs, I put the maps. When I travel, I like to show people where I am exactly. I love maps in general. I love geography. I love to, navigate through a map. So that's why I usually put maps. But I do so especially when I travel to locations that are not very famous or very well known. In this case, Tuscany especially is already a very well-known location to travel to in the Western world. So I didn't feel the need to let people know where exactly I was. Also, I was along the Via Francigena and, there are only a few places that you can be if you are walking along the Via Francigena. So that was the reason why. Did anyone have issues with charging electronic devices? No, it was very easy. I mean, I was charging many devices every night and it was fine. Okay, that's all for today because this video is already long enough. I still have so many questions, all the questions related to the drone, which one it was, whether it was okay with the group that I would fly the drone and stuff like that. All the questions regarding the backpack, what I packed and whether stuff inside would get wet from the back sweat, what shoes I used, how often I would change the socks, whether there was cell phone service along the way, the cost of a trip like this. All these questions I will answer in a second part of this Q&A. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video.